What's going on, FA Nation? Welcome back. This is the Fantasy Alarm NASCAR DFS podcast, now previewing the races following practice and qualifying on Saturdays. I'm Dan Malin. I'm joined, as always, by the FSWA three-time NASCAR Rider of the Year, Matt Selz. We are previewing Vegas. Matt, how you doing on this lovely Saturday afternoon?
I'm good. Apologies for getting the pod out a little later than normal. A friend of mine had a surprise birthday party at lunch that had been planned for like 3 months, so I couldn't really move that. So
Nice.
I was able to watch practice and qualifying while at the restaurant because it was a sports bar. So while I was watching K-State flounder in the second half to West Virginia, I also watched the Cup practice and qualifying. Saw Harrison Burton put the car into the wall. Tyler Reddick needed an engine change, didn't practice or qualify. So yeah, we're good. But of course, there's bigger news this weekend.
Yeah, the big news that broke late Friday night, Chase Elliott, broken leg, basically fractured his tibia, had a 3-hour surgery Friday night. He is going to be out for several weeks. Josh Berry steps in. DK actually gave him a respectable price tag of $8,000.
Yeah, they also put him at 20-1 on DK Sportsbook.
That's kind of insane. 5%
Bovada has him at Bovada has him at 66-1, which I think
that's probably
more. Yeah, if we all harken back to 2015 when Kyle Busch broke his leg, obviously that was at a Daytona incident, and he was out for several weeks. It's probably going to be about that timeline. Kyle Busch said it probably depends on if it's closer to the knee or the ankle, because the ankle you need more flexibility in the joint to press the clutch or the brake, depending on how Chase Elliott drives his number 9 car. So it's going to be several weeks.
Yeah.
So we'll see if it's Josh Berry the whole time. We'll see if it's Justin Allgaier a little bit. But I would expect it to be a shifting of guys from JRM up to the Cup Series. I would presume, because they're basically a feeder team for Hendrick. So that's what I would presume. I don't know if it'll be Josh Berry past this week or not. We'll have to see.
Well, we can at least start talking Vegas a little bit. Obviously, we hope Chase Elliott gets well soon, but it unfortunately won't be soon. But Friday Night Truck Series, saw a lot of good screenshots in the Discord for people that had some decent returns on ROI, regardless of how much you played. I woke up on my couch at 3:30 in the morning and saw that I finished third in the happy hour, so that was a nice surprise. I fell asleep before the end of the race, so that's what happens. It happens almost every time that there's a truck race in Vegas, because I always know that they're going to roll off at 9 p.m. on the East Coast, and that's usually around the time that I'm going to bed, and I struggle to stay awake. But Kyle Busch gets the win. He is currently running in the Xfinity Series race. He is attempting to go for the Vegas sweep, coming off his big win at Auto Club last week. I know we'll get to the track breakdown, but I kind of just want to touch on the hometown guy first. Like, are you anticipating building around Kyle Busch quite heavily? I don't know if I necessarily like going back to the guy who won the previous week, and plus he's been kind of heavily bet to win at his home track as well, and rightfully so. But what are your thoughts on Kyle Busch this week?
Yeah, look, I guess we can get into this with the strategy, right? And who, is fading Kyle Busch a good idea or not? He's the most expensive guy on DK. I'm pretty sure he's at or near the top of the price list there on FanDuel too. We've got 400 laps in this race for the Cup Series. 400 miles, 267 laps. Apologies, 267 laps. So there's a decent chunk of Dominator points that we can get, right? Getting a laps led leader, getting a Dominator, at least one into your build at a 1.5 mile track is a must if you're going to finish high in the money. Question is that Kyle Busch? He looked good in practice. He qualified well. He's rolling off 5th for the Cup race. But are we it just seems like he's had everything asked of him this weekend between the Truck Series. Now he's got all of the various interviews at the hometown track about switching manufacturers, and then he's running Xfinity, and now we got the Chase Elliott thing, so now he's being asked about that and if guys should be allowed to do things outside of racing during the season. And so my question is he going to be just mentally exhausted about halfway through the Cup race on Sunday? I don't know. I don't know if I'm building around him. He's going to be in some lineups, but I don't think he's my top build around guy right now.
I kind of agree. Obviously, he was great in the truck race on Friday night, and I was overweight with exposure there. I didn't play him at all in the Xfinity race just because I didn't like his comments about the car. And
Yes.
so if you just compound like everything between like all three races, all the questions he's had to answer, maybe even the mild headache that he wasn't really given, or he didn't give any input on the setup sheet for the Colleague car that he's running in the Xfinity series. It is kind of a lot to handle, and maybe like this guy's just looking forward to a day off on Monday, but it's awfully hard to just not play him at all. And like you, I'm not trying to build around him, but I imagine that I'll still get some exposure in my 20 lineups.
Yeah, he's not. Look, will he appear in the core plays that I put out on Sunday? Almost assuredly for tournaments. Yeah, because does he have the ability to dominate? Sure. Do you need him to? Yes. If he doesn't, he's not worth the price tag. So he's not my highest owned guy, but I will play him.
All right, let's discuss the track. 1.5 miles, they're what they would call these cookie cutter intermediates, these 1.5 mile trials. Just give us the lowdown on Vegas.
Yeah, Vegas is one of the steeper ones. It does have progressive banking in the corner, which means the closer to the wall you get, the more banking you get, so that theoretically there's more lines and you can carry momentum around the outside. It's not really a tire wear track. It's pretty well kept up. It's not like in the realm of, certainly not in the realm of Auto Club. It's not anywhere close to Homestead or Darlington. In terms of comparable tracks, we're looking at high-speed intermediate, so it compares well with Kansas. We can look at Texas. We can look at Charlotte. I would even toss Michigan in there because Michigan isn't a tire wear track like Auto Club. It's a high-speed 2-mile intermediate that's got relatively similar banking to Las Vegas. So those would be the similar tracks. In terms of how we're approaching this, am I looking at what guys did last year here? A little bit, sure. But I'm really taking the second half of last year as a group and looking at how they performed at intermediates, because by the second half of last year, a lot of teams had started to figure out speed in the car. Think about how much better Toyotas were in the second half of last year compared to the first half of last year. Fords came on in the second half of last year, aside from Blaney, who was fast everywhere, and Logano was fast everywhere. But all of the other Fords came on in the second half last year. So, we're looking a little bit at practice times this week. We're looking at what they did in the second half of last year at intermediates. And, a little bit of what they did. I'm not even sure last week really counts because it's a high tire wear track, so you can't really compare the two. So that's kind of the lay of the land here. You want to get down to what slates or what tournaments and whatnot are you playing this week?
Definitely playing the Chrome Horn. That's the $4, the 20 max. It's usually like between 10 to 20K to first. I've mostly just been doing the happy hour for the Truck and Xfinity series because I don't have as much confidence in those drivers. But, I love your previews and your playbooks for the Cup Series every Sunday, so I usually go a little bit heavier with that. I think I'm actually going to dabble with some cash games this week. There's obvious cash game chalk that has emerged, and we'll get to that shortly, but I do feel better about playing cash games this week. There wasn't I didn't play it last week just because there was too much chalk. There was too much obvious cash game chalk, and it really kind of felt like it came down to having the right 2v2 plays in your cash game lineup against everyone else. So that's kind of why I laid off with double ups and triple ups last week. But I'm feeling pretty good about going back to the cash games this week. And I think I'm going to mix it in with some of my 20 max lineups. I think I'm going to start doing some of the $12 single entry, 24, maybe the $50 single entry, but a lot of 3 max contests as well. Probably just the $3 3 max. But definitely Chrome Horn, $12, 24, and 50. the single entry contest. Those are the ones that I'll probably be playing this week.
Yeah, I like the single entries this week quite a bit. I do. Look, I've never really been a big favorite of the mass multi-entry ones. It's not a skill set of mine. At some point, I will hone it in a bit more, but I'd rather get a core of guys together and play in maybe 5 entry max contests and build around the core. And whatnot. I do think that there are some interesting cash plays this week that you can build without having to stock up on the quote-unquote chalky guys. But in general, I do think which slate do you think is more interesting to build, this week's slate or last week's slate? Because last week's slate turned out to be fantastically different to be able to go anywhere with.
I personally, and maybe this is recency bias because this is quite literally the flavor of the week, but I prefer Vegas just because we do have practice, we have qualifying, we have good weather. Obviously the news with Elliott and Tyler Reddick, who will be starting at the rear because for an engine change. Just feel better and more confident this week. Whereas last week, it was fun having all those PD plays because we knew we were going to see high scores in cash and tournaments, and those are always fun. But it was also kind of a bummer just because there was so much chalk and there, like, you had to really have the right pivots and the right leverage. So I've done a lot of research. I've watched the betting lines move a lot throughout the week. I only have one bet on this race, though. So for me personally, I am more excited about Sunday's race for Vegas than I am about Auto Club. Because Auto Club, honestly, I didn't really entertain playing anything other than the Chrome Horn. I only played the Chrome Horn last week. And I didn't make a profit or anything, but, I'm more comfortable in looking forward to building lineups for this slate much more than last week.
I would agree. The fact that we've seen cars on track, I think, certainly helps. I do think there are some sneaky different directions you could go here in terms of lap sled dominators. I think anybody starting in the top, let's say 6, could be a lap sled dominator pretty reasonably, which would be Logano's on the pole, Byron is on the outside pole. Then you got Blaney third. Who is 4? I got to remind myself. So Ty Gibbs is 4th, which is going to be an interesting one. I think he might be pretty popular, to be honest. 5 is Kyle Busch and 6 is Kyle Larson. So I think any of those could wind up being lap sled dominators, and I think Ty Gibbs is probably going to be the highest played dude under 7K.
Is it that the hope is that he goes out and is just a cheap source of maybe some dominator points?
I would say so. I mean, the car looked okay. I mean, it looked decent in practice. I mean, it looked better over single lap, like shorter runs than longer runs. But I think that a lot of people are going to try to save money and get a second dominator.
Oh, for sure. This is definitely a 2 dominator track.
Right. If you go with a second dominator, I think Ty Gibbs is probably the most popular second dominator because he's starting 4th and he's 6,600. Right. The next guy starting like that we could conceivably see lead a bunch of laps. Maybe Alex Bowman in 11th at 8,500 or Byron 2nd at 9,100. So you've got a huge gap there. But I would say in general, we're looking for 2 dominators in a build.
Here's my one reservation with Gibbs. It's a very small sample size because he didn't really step into a cup car until the Kurt Busch concussion late last year. But he only has one top 10 finish in what he maybe has like 17 or 18 career finishes, and he's starting 4th. Yeah. I don't know if I necessarily agree that he'll be the most popular play in the 6K range, just because I think the general inclination among a lot of the industry might be that he just goes backwards and he loses points.
That's fair. So if you're not on Gibbs, who in this range do you think becomes the chalk in place of?
There is one guy in the 7K range that I really like, just because there are so many plays starting behind him that I think he goes overlooked, but I might save that one for Discord because it's strictly a tournament play. But in this 6K range, maybe even the 5K range, this won't be my favorite play of these values. I don't hate Corey LaJoie at 5,200 starting P19. I think that there might be a little bit of leverage there. Now, that's only going to be a tournament play, but he finished 16th at Daytona. Finished 14th last week at Auto Club. So very low. There's very little money with that team, but he's actually made the best out of it so far with that. I could probably see myself getting back on board with Justin Haley or AJ Allmendinger, who are both right around that 6K line. Closer to Gibbs, I might consider Chris Buescher at 6,900. Nice, starting P18.
Yeah, he did look surprisingly quick in practice.
Right.
Yeah, I do think that there are several plays. Now let's talk about Josh Berry a little bit more because he's 8K on DK. He's starting 32nd. He looked pretty timid in that car.
That's the thing, is that I don't really want to play a guy that's getting his first looks in this car. I'm hoping a lot of the field is just seeing that it's an $8,000 price tag and you're getting Hendrick Motorsports equipment. And honestly, a lot of the betting preview podcasts that I listened to this week, they were all hyping up Chevy. And rightfully so. Like, Chevy looked phenomenal last week. Their cars seemed prepped and ready to go. So I get that aspect of it. And he's won here twice in the Xfinity Series in 4 races. He's a very popular DFS play for Saturday's race. But again, for a guy that's I can't remember if this is his debut or if he maybe ran 1 race last year in the Cup Series, but I don't love it's just a whole different dynamic and how difficult this next gen car is driving between the Cup Series and the Xfinity Series. So if he's timid in practice, I don't necessarily feel great about the play in DFS because he's 8K starting P32, so he needs 40 points, and he's not even hitting value with the top 20, and I don't necessarily feel good about him cracking the top 20 as it stands right now.
Yeah, I saw a lot of people saying, well, he had teens upside being in the number 9, the Hendrick car, just assuming that it's a plug and play. But I agree with you. The driving style between the two, the Xfinity car and the Cup car, is so different now that, I didn't exactly like what I saw from him in practice. His 10-lap average wasn't great. In terms of the guys that ran 10-lap averages, his was the third slowest.
I'll say this. I don't hate him for cash games just because I think that there's a good enough floor that even if he somehow does squeak into the top 20, he's only getting you like 35 points. But I think I could live with that in cash games.
Yeah, I just think I just don't think he's tournament playable. I think there's other places you could go for a cash game play outside of Josh Berry because I think right now he's just trying not to destroy the car.
That's
right. And
I would agree.
Anybody that drives, like we saw this when Ty Gibbs first came up last year, he was just trying not to destroy the car.
Yeah.
And I don't really want to pay basically average price for a guy to just try to bring the car home safely. So, look, I think he's going to be popular because, Chase Elliott's car is good. He's Hendrick. Josh Berry, like you said, he won twice here in Xfinity. But we'll let other people play in that pool. Not sure. Now, what are we doing with Ty Reddick?
I feel like you just have to play him in cash games. In tournaments, I understand that wanting the leverage of being underweight. You have to imagine that for any tournament contest, he's probably going to be at least 40% owned. In cash contests, he should probably be at least 70% owned. I know he's not getting practice. I know he's not getting qualifying. The results through 2 races have not been good.
I mean, he started 35th and finished 34th last week at Auto Club.
Yeah, a track that did he have any issues? I can't remember. Honestly, I fell asleep and I missed the end of that race too. I'm really good at falling asleep during NASCAR races.
I want to say he had an issue, but I can't. Like, he wasn't just that slow.
Right, but it just hasn't been a good debut for him since joining Toyota.
Correct. So I'm with you. I think in tournament plays, I think I'm off of him. I think in cash,
I'm fine eating the chalk because even if he busts, he's probably hurting everybody's lineup. So you still have a path to making money and doubling up.
Yeah, I agree. But yeah, I would say it's still a more of a GPP slate than a cash slate, but cash is more playable this week than it was last week because there's a lot less chalk.
You can feel good about just making your own lineup and not making a lineup that's going to be played by 30% of the field.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think there's less chances for lineup trains this week. There's less obvious lineup trains this
Correct.
week. Than there was last week. But in general, yeah,
Do you have a favorite dominator that stands out to you so far?
I think Larson's going to be very popular, but I'm not sure that I'm going that route. I think a guy that might not be played quite as much as William Byron.
See, I can't decide if he's going to be popular or not because he's too cheap and he's already on the front row. So all he has to do is just get around Joey Logano. Joey Logano has a very good resume at Vegas. But also Byron had one of the fastest cars, I believe, late in the year on these kind of like medium to we'll call it medium tire wear intermediates. And so, I mean, there's no Chase Elliott. Like he could be a guy to kind of just, pick up the. I don't know.
See, I think why Byron may not be as popular is because Logano's on the pole, who's very good at Vegas and intermediates and leading laps. You have Larson 6th. You have Kyle Busch as 5th, who's been all the talk this week, right? Ryan Blaney, who has still been fast. He's starting 3rd. Like, he may not be. I think if you give people the choice between Blaney and Byron, I think more people choose Blaney than Byron in that scenario. I think Byron might get overlooked.
If he does, I love it. I love the price tag of just 9,100 on DK. One guy I do actually like that we did not mention is Ross Chastain.
He's been really fast.
Yeah. Finished 3rd last week, led 91 laps, 22 fastest laps for 79 points on DraftKings. Even last year, like Trackhouse was surprisingly good. I'm not going to give away the name, but like that sneaky GPP play that I said I would leave for the Discord, it's his teammate. But I really like Trackhouse.
I've been on his teammate because like Vegas put Suarez at 50-1 to start the week, and DK closed it to 25-1 pretty quickly, right?
Yeah,
Chastain was still 8-1. So like, if you like Chastain at 8-1, why wouldn't you take a shot on triple the return on his teammate? Now his teammate is starting further back, sure, but he's also had a better, faster car, arguably, for the last.
I almost like Suarez enough for cash games too.
I kind of do too.
I don't think anyone's going to play him in cash games.
I don't think so because he kind of like he's starting 24th, right? But like, there's enough. You're right. There's enough guys starting around him or behind him that I think he gets a little bit lost.
Yeah.
In the flow, like.
I subscribe to a few websites and I haven't really looked at ownership projections because I don't know if they're out yet. But I love Suarez if he's going to fall in like an 8 to 12 projected ownership. And I'd go at least double that in my builds.
Yeah.
Maybe even triple. Like, I'm not afraid to go heavy on Suarez tomorrow.
I mean, he's 7,600 and Josh Berry's $8,000 and Berry's going to be played more, I would think. Tyler Reddick's 8,800. He's going to be played more. I think you can go down and people would take more shots on Allmendinger and Haley. and toss Ty Gibbs in there for a dominator in a cash game. I think
You put Ty Gibbs in a cash game?
I think some people will build it for Ty Gibbs being the dominator in a cash game to save money.
Oy.
But I wouldn't do it.
I'm not doing that.
I think some people's going to be stupid, but can't fix stupid. In terms of builds, we're looking for one dominator in a cash game, and the rest is PD. For GPPs, we're looking for two dominators, and the rest is GPP.
I would also say, I know this doesn't typically happen on intermediates, but I always do commit at least 2 or 3 tournament builds. If you're doing 20 or more lineups, I would still try to get some tournament builds that are just one dominator, because on the off chance that it does happen and you nail that dominator and you have 5 other good PD plays, because odds are that there are going to be 2 or 3 guys that collect a lot of the dominator points. I guess you probably want between 20, 25, maybe even 30 dominator points if you are targeting, per dominator. But if this is just an off chance where it's one of those guys that, just dominates the whole race, leads a ton of laps, has the fastest laps, and he's just going over 120 points on DraftKings, then you like having that guy as your solo dominator while having 5 other guys that just move up and finish well. So I would say, don't go all the way in on 2 dominator builds. Do reserve some wiggle room for just one solo dominator lineups.
Yep, I agree.
Anything else you wanted to touch on? Any drivers that we may have skipped, or if you just want to save them for the playbook, totally understand. We're not trying to give a full field breakdown because this is a free podcast. We just want to kind of preview our favorite plays and a little bit of contrarian options as well. But, we'll be in the Discord, tonight and tomorrow heading into the race.
Yeah, no, I think we'll keep the rest for Discord and the playbook. Yeah, I don't really have much to add strategy-wise. I think it's, a fun race to build for. Lineup lock on DK, I believe, is 3:47 Eastern, Sunday afternoon. Check for FanDuel because they usually do different, and FanDuel might lock earlier than DK.
I got to give FanDuel credit. I don't like FanDuel's scoring. We crap on it all the time, but I actually like that they at least offer 5-entry max contests. I prefer those over 3-entry.
I would agree.
That's the only thing that they DraftKings.
Yeah, I would agree. Also, by the way, they have, as of 5:30 Eastern on Saturday, not added Josh Berry to the player pool. I would not expect them to add Josh Berry to the player pool.
That's so nice of them.
Just as a heads up, they usually, once it's set, they usually don't add a guy. And they've already had a day at this point to do it. So I don't expect them to add him. So if you want to play Josh Berry, your only option is on DraftKings. But yeah, so check out the playbook, or keep reading it if you're listening to this atop the playbook. And we'll have projections out Saturday evening, and core plays out Sunday, and then any adjustments needed prior to the race on Sunday in Discord.
All right. Well, Matt, thank you so much for your time. Best of luck to you Sunday at Vegas, and best of luck to the FA Nation.